Well, I don't know who has jumped ship yet from the Democrats. I'd love to hear it.
Well, at the state level, we're seeing all sorts of state senators and legislative people. We've seen in the House, one Democrat say they're shifting over to...
Right. By the way, I learned this morning that the most liberal member of the House of Representatives, Bob Wexler from Florida, resigned. And there's no mechanism to replace him in time for the vote on the health care. Now, health care in the House passed by 3 votes. So Mrs. Pelosi now has 2 votes with which to play. That's the extent of her cushion.
Wow, that is huge news. And so to be clear, when Senator Dodd says that it's hanging by a thread in conference committee, the government grab of health care, it really is hanging by a thread.
Oh, it absolutely is. There's a congressman whose name is escaping me, a member of the African-American leadership in the House, a Democrat from Missouri, was once the mayor of Kansas City, who said this morning that it truly is in danger. He predicts eventually something will pass, but he doesn't think it'll be either the House version or the Senate version. Here's a member of the Democratic leadership who predicted they'd go back to square one. Why? Because they did it behind the scenes, because they didn't care about natural rights, they didn't care about the free market, they didn't care about American values, they didn't care about the Constitution, and they're trying to shove it down our throats.
And I think the biggest issue here is liberals finally read the bill and found out, wait, we're not getting a free lunch. They raise our taxes and cut our goodies. This is a big bailout to insurance companies.
Oh, absolutely. And I am delighted to hear the liberals scream that they and their states will be paying more money because Nebraska doesn't have to pay for Medicaid and Medicare. The liberals, and some conservatives have done this too, have been bribing their own members of Congress for generations in order to secure their votes. But when they are not the recipient of the bribe, but the payer of it, oh, how you can hear them squeal.
Judge, I want to get you up for a full hour in the near future to talk about your latest book, all the work you're doing, because you really are trailblazing at Fox News, and I see them more and more aligning themselves with you and your constitutionalist view. But in the 6-7 minutes we've got left, moving quickly, specifically with your constitutional law background, a constitutional law lawyer and judge, specifically, if you could call the shots right now, how do we force Bankergate out into the open? I mean, it's already blowing up in their face. How do we ensure that we mortally wound the private Federal Reserve banking cartel and reveal to the world that this is a unconstitutional, larcenous enterprise? Because this patina, this cloak of invincibility has now fallen away from them. Your take on that?
Well, there's a couple of things going on, and they're both positive in our direction. There is litigation making its way through the courts, which in my view will grant to Bloomberg News and to Fox News, under the Freedom of Information Act, documents that the Federal Reserve has been fighting aggressively to keep secret with respect to TARP. Now, we may not get these documents until after the election of 2010, but once we do get them, it'll be a treasure trove. There is also legislation making its way through Congress, which is Congressman Ron Paul's legislation to audit the Fed. Now, unfortunately, it has been attached to other legislation, which is utterly hateful to those of us who believe in the free market and limited government. But by attaching it to that legislation, the president cannot veto it because he desperately wants the other legislation with it. It's a sleeper. If it becomes law and if there is a true audit of the Fed, as it does call for, it will expose this monster from Jekyll Island for all of the horrific things it's done. The secret foreign policy that it runs, the monsters that it's been bailing out, the people that have been making money, the inflation, the secret tax that it's imposed on all of us. We will finally have in front of the American people in black and white the who, what, when, where, and how that they did this to us.
So the momentum is shifting in the direction of liberty. Everybody can feel it. You are seeing it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but, it's an odd momentum. I'll give you an example. The chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, the bombastic and colorful Barney Frank, a quintessential liberal Democrat who believes in Soviet-style central planning, is now a co-sponsor of Ron Paul's Audit the Fed. So At the same time, he will help that part of the bill to pass, the audit the Fed. He will also usher through more power to the Fed to regulate the economy. So in some narrow ways, I see blossoms of liberty in the land, but in other ways I see the most heavy-handed government we have ever known, and it's almost a question of holding our breath until the Democrats lose the filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and perhaps the majority in the House just 10 months from now.
And the bigger question is, will we see a repeat of Gingrich, the establishment globalist, coming in, taking control of the new Republicans, and making sure they don't deliver to the people? Because if Republicans actually delivered liberty and freedom, they would be in power for 50 years. We'd save the country. But no, they're going to want to launch more wars. They're going to want to make money off the naked body scanners like Chertoff. They're going to want to, and if Republicans, as they get into power in the next 3 years, in the next 2 elections, if they don't deliver on liberty, what comes next?
Well, I don't know what will come next. But when in the 6 years that the Republicans controlled the White House and the Congress, which would be George W. Bush's first term and the first 2 years of his second term, I think there was less fidelity to the Constitution than at any time in our history since the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. The Republicans have no monopoly whatsoever on fidelity to natural law, free market, and the Constitution.
So we've got to hold their feet to the fire.
Big government versus the Democrat version of big government.
So we've got to hold their feet to the fire and really vet these Republicans.
Absolutely, we do. And I see this third-party movement coming, whether you call it Tea Parties or whatever you want to call it. I see independents, Republicans and Democrats coming together in droves to kick out the incumbents no matter which party they're in.
Exactly. This is a real revolution, a restoration of the Constitution. The people are rediscovering liberty, and the system is not going to be able to scam the people much longer. In closing, Judge, I brought this up to you when you first got on during the break. SEC, of course, the whole conspiracy there, we've covered that. But Obama Information Czar outlined plan for the government to infiltrate and provocateur conspiracy groups. And we also have Obama's TSA nominee says they want, in a video, they want to target anti-government Christians as the main threat. This repeats what we saw in the MIAC and Homeland Security report saying returning vets, gun owners are what the Homeland Security's really been set up for. Judge, we now have the individual that this Harvard professor, Cass Sunstein, that they're trying to put in over this, wrote a public Harvard paper a year and a half ago calling for provocateuring violence in conservative groups so the government can shut us down. This is illegal.
Well, of course it's illegal. Let me get this straight. The government, which has taken oath to uphold the law, is going to try and provoke people to break the law, people that it disagrees with politically, so that it can destroy their organizations and lock up their leaders. Does this sound like Europe in 1939? All over again.
By the way, he says that. He says word for word so we can destroy their organizations. He actually says that.
Well, I didn't even know he said that. I was going by the summary that you gave me. I think that this needs, and it's a job you're doing, and I will do, needs to be proclaimed from the rooftops. People need to know what's coming. They also need to remember that the tools that the government has to visit this harm upon us came about in the Bush administration, the Patriot Act, and other companion legislation, which went through Congress with next to no debate, and with very few members of Congress reading it, gave the Obama administration the tools to invade our privacy and wreck our Constitution.
Judge, what's scary to me is that he would write a 30-page white paper published by Harvard. He's not even hiding this.
It does. Well, it shows you their chutzpah. And it shows you the self-confidence with which they operate. And it shows you the I'll use your phrase, info wars that we're going to be battling in the next 10 months. Now, we may be battling them longer. I think that the Republicans will gain enough strength to stifle the Democrats after November. I think the real battle will be in the next 10 months. If I'm wrong, the real battle will be for the next 3 years.
So it's like the Alamo. We've got to hold them here while reinforcements get there.
There you go.
Judge, I really want to thank you for spending time with us. Fire out websites, your new book, any other info for the listeners.
My next book is called Lies the Government Told You, Myth, Power, and Deception in American History. It comes out the first week in March. JudgeKnapp.com or Freedom Watch at FoxNews.com for all my video on demand. Ron Paul is on with us once or twice a week. My pleasure, Alex.
Judge, again, I want to commend you for all the work you're doing, and I appreciate you always telling the truth, always being a pure constitutionalist, and we're really blessed to have you. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thanks, Alex. Always a pleasure.
All right, there goes Judge Andrew Napolitano. And again, he knew about the TSA nominee head saying go after Christians and gun owners. He didn't know about this new guy. But this is actually, the liberals are attacking Obama for this COINTELPRO operative. I found out about this from liberals.